Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have Eternals from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Marvel Studios. This is a 2021 film, came out last fall, just like a month before Spider-Man. Um, this is 2 hours and 38 minutes. It says on my computer 39 here for whatever reason. Um, and yeah, this is a big deal. This is a big deal film, although it's not an anomaly in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the sense that you release a Marvel film and usually everybody kind of loses their minds and just loves it, and it makes just $1 billion at the box office, like Spider-Man. Like a month later, even just this weekend, they re-released Spider-Man into the theaters, No Way Home, with extra scenes just to scrape up extra money and celebrate Spider-Man's 60th anniversary, and it hit the top spot. It sold the most tickets. I went to see it this weekend, just to see the extra stuff. Even though I already have the Blu-ray, and I can, yeah. So it's not on Disney Plus, but yet. Um, but yeah, it's Eternals didn't have that kind of reception. In fact, I have a number of people who are like, "Oh, you know what? I like most everything, but I really didn't like Eternals," and nobody can fully suss out why. But it just didn't connect with them as it does with so many other Marvel films. I think this is it comes from a very very different place. It comes from um, it's very disconnected from the MCU proper. There's references galore. There's references to Thor and Captain America and Iron Man and just all sorts of different things around the MCU. Spoken by the characters in this. Some of actually know some of the heroes in one manner or another in passing, um, over history, but they they're very disconnected because it's one of those things where, like, okay, these guys are immortal beings that have been around for thousands of years through the uh, sort of like the evolution of humanity, and we've never seen them before. Why didn't they help out with Thanos? They're pretty powerful from the looks of it. And there's a reason for that, and it's explained in the film. No matter whether you think it's a good explanation or not, it's something that it's a good reason for them as to why things didn't go the way we would expected if there was super people hanging around for thousands of years and somebody came around and just started snapping people out of existence. So yeah, it makes it's you may not like it, but it still makes sense. And I mean, when it comes to these characters, also, we are sort of, I mean, we're given 2.5 hours to get to know them. By the way, the last 15 minutes of this film are the credits, which is when the credits first roll. I looked at the timer. I'm like, oh, there's still 15 minutes. Yes, there's two after credits, mid and end credit sequence that are pretty important. Yeah, really, especially the mid credit sequence. The latter one also very important, but we don't even understand why or how yet. I won't spoil it for you. Comic book nerds absolutely know who Dane Whitman is. Yes, it has to do with Dane Whitman, Cersei's boyfriend, played by what's his name, Kit Harington. You know him from Game of Thrones. He's going to be important, and I think a lot of people, like I say, I'm not playing apologist for this. I was just saying that I think a lot of people, when they look at this and they just see it one time, they go, well, what was the point of it? What Okay, they saved the world. You kind of understand they're going to save the world. Spoiler, but yeah, you put a bunch of new heroes in front of a screen for the first time. You're going to have them win, even though they lose big in many ways. Not all of them make it out of the film alive. Spoiler, but I won't say who. And things get really twisty and dark for them throughout the process of their adventure. It's not a upbeat, sarcastic always. There's lots of sarcasm in this, but it's not as lighthearted as say maybe an Iron Man film or a Spider-Man film. It is definitely more of a drama. It's directed by Chloe Zhao, who is known for her more independent film uh, credits. I could click on her name and find the list of stuff she's done, but she's an indie director doing a big superhero movie. Now we know that the Marvel MCU films aren't necessarily superhero films. They are films with superheroes in them, but they span many genres. So we get Captain America doing spy action thriller in Winter Soldier. We get sci-fi with Guardians of the Galaxy. We get all sorts of different things, fantasy with Thor, and things like that throughout all different corners of the Marvel MCU, which is kind of great. Yes, while some of their origins and some of their uh, how they start out are kind of similar. That's a subtle, not so subtle way of saying, like Iron Man and Doctor Strange are both, and Thor. They're all guys who are pretty much full of themselves. They got everything going for them, and then they're taught a lesson in humility, and from the ashes of that, they become heroes and learn a lesson and grow because of it. And they fundamentally change who they are. Tony the least, but at least on the surface. And deep down, he obviously did, as we know. But when it comes to the Eternals, I'm going to talk about the Eternals. I think it comes from its roots are different. Normally we see created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, or Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, or Stan Lee and like Stan Lee's name is over all over everything. But when you see the Eternals created by Jack Kirby, if you don't know who Jack Kirby is, please look him up. KRBY, and he is the father along with Stan, but in many cases the in some cases more than Stan, even though Stan was always the more out in front cheerleader talking kind of guy. Jack stayed at his drawing table and he just cranked out the classics. He gave us the look of the Marvel universe in comics and in television and in film throughout the last 80 years, 85 years almost. He co-created Captain America long before there was a Marvel Comics. So when Jack for a time left Marvel Comics because he wasn't getting along with Stan, and there's some other just stuff going on. He went to DC and created New Gods, which is something somewhat similar to the Eternals, but he liked these big space opera epic kind of things. And if you know Jack's style, he has a distinct style. He changed the look of comic books, not just because of superheroes and things like that, but he changed the look of comics with his unique styling of characters, positions, movement, depiction of movement, and just otherworldly type of things. You can see it in the costumes, in the Eternals. You can see every line and circle and crackle of energy. There's a thing called the Kirby crackle that it's found throughout a number of MCU films, but it's a Jack Kirby thing. Although a lot of artists do ape him because it's a kind of a tribute to use the Kirby crackle of energy that formed the Fantastic Four, or Doctor Doom using his gauntlets, or things like that. You get the idea that it's something that Stan created, and some people, like I said, artists have recreated that look because it's so iconic. And well, Jack eventually did go back to Marvel after a time when things kind of cooled down, and he created the Eternals. Powerful godlike beings, and who have a responsibility to protect the Earth. Now, the purpose and the look and the attitude and the characterization of a lot of the Eternals over the years have changed a lot. But one of the core elements of this is, when we look at a lot of superhero stuff, a lot of this stuff is based on mythology, especially Thor. Of course, you see a humongous element of the Thor that we see in Marvel Comics, and also the MCU with Chris Hemsworth, is not the same as the Asgardian legends, the Norse legends that are real. They're based on them. They're a take on that kind of stuff. So, like, the Norse legends have Thor and Odin and all these things, all these elements, Loki, and it's very different. But this is the Marvel way. And in this sense, Eternals started one way and transformed over the years. But I've lost my train of thought in this. I realize this, but one of the unique things about these guys, these heroes, you might recognize names like Athena, Icarus. I flew too close to the sun. Uh, there's Makari. There's just so many different names you recognize. It like, hey, that sounds like people from mythology. Well, these aren't heroes that were necessarily copies of characters uh, taken from mythology. These are characters who inspired the mythology that inspired heroes, in a sense. So when you meet these characters, Angelina Jolie as Athena, people go, "Oh, Athena, the warrior goddess." Uh, no, it's Athena. You're just saying it wrong. But in certain cultures and mythology and understanding of who Athena is, it's based on her. And there's other different characters who fill each of those slots. Gilgamesh is a prime example because Gilgamesh is kind of sort of like this everyman type of hero who went on great adventures, and Gilgamesh, in a sense, also was interpreted as Hercules in Greek culture. So yeah, there's all sorts of ins and outs to me that makes it really interesting. Because I mean, my first experience with the Eternals is like when Cersei joined the Avengers in the late '80s, early '90s. I can't remember exactly when I was reading it, but Cersei was part of it, and she was really seductive, and she's really confident in her ways, and she was off-putting, but at the same time she could flirt like the best of them. Like she could make Tony Stark a little bit afraid of her, but it still is the kind of things that in this character is very different, and I actually really like what they've done with this. And this is a foundational film. This is sort of like doing it backwards from the way they did the Avengers, where they each had Iron Man and Captain America and Thor individual movies building up to a central Avengers film. And in this case, it's everybody suddenly getting introduced in current day, as we understand who they are in current day, but also in flashbacks, filling in their backstory, making you understand who they are, what pieces of history they were involved with, and why they chose to actually be involved with those big moments in history. And it's all because of the deviants. The deviants are just alien creatures that feed on humans and just eat and kill and everything else. So the Eternals are tasked with protecting them. Now, the movie that you start with transforms considerably by the end of the first hour. Even the characters realize that things are not what they expected. I'm not going to spoil these things for you because some people may have skipped this film at the theater, and I don't want to ruin it. I say watch it with an open mind, have an understanding that you are not going to get your Avengers yayas. Spider-Man's not going to walk by and wave, and you're going to get, yes, people talking about these characters, but and you know what? And sometimes you're going to be like, hey, are you sure that guy isn't Superman, and that woman isn't Wonder Woman, and that person isn't the Flash? And like, yeah, yes, there are comparisons to DC characters that can easily be made, but they're not like aping those. In fact, if anything, it's not like Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash were aping the Eternals at all. Certainly not, because those characters existed well before the Eternals. But in a real world sense, Superman and Wonder Woman, Flash, and all these others were all based on ancient mythology and ancient characters in mythology, just created with a modern aesthetic, or for 1939 or whatever, when Superman came out. Was it 39? 34? Batman was 39. I don't know. Well, one of the cool things about this also is that they make references to DC comic characters. There's a reference to Superman and Batman. So in the Marvel Universe, people read DC Comics, which is kind of neat. So if you're expecting a Superman Batman crossover of the Marvel Universe, it ain't gonna happen necessarily. That would be kind of weird. In the world outside your window, world of Marvel, is no Metropolis or Gotham City. So maybe a multiverse thing. You never know. Hey, Kang could do some really crazy stuff. Speaking of which, I'm going to spoil this tiny bit. Kang does show up in this film, but I'm not going to tell you where. Subtly, sort of. But yeah, it's this is a like I said, this is a foundational film, and I think it's a must see for a lot of people because this is this is a touchstone for many things to come. The Eternals are not going to just be some sort of offshoot that's riding along the side while other stuff is happening over here with the Thunderbolts and the other other Avengers films and things like that. Eventually, these things are all going to merge together, and it's all intentional. It's all already planned out. We know that's how it is. So it's super important to get to know these characters and. I say watch it once, watch it twice, and to me, I found myself, even though I've seen it a couple times already, I saw it at least twice, maybe 3 times in the theater. I with different people, so I'm not just like a guy who just goes to the movies all the time, seeing the same thing. I try to see different stuff as well. But in this situation, this is the first time I saw it at home on Disney Plus in the IMAX thing, enhanced IMAX aspect ratio. In this, we get to see. I got to see things I really didn't get to see before, and I was trying to work on other stuff while I had it on the background because I knew the film pretty well, and I realized I was drawn into it fully. Like I couldn't even concentrate on other stuff. Like there are some neat little moments. You find yourself, because it's a drama a lot of the time, that there's a lot of whispered tones or serious tones. While there's jokes and everything else. Camille Nanjiani is Kingo, and he's an Eternal who has ability to create like plasma balls. He shoots them like they're guns, like bullets and stuff. You'll know him. He was recently in the Obi-Wan series as that smuggler, but you've seen him in so many other things. My brain is blanking on that HBO series with Tom Middleton. Yeah, about computers, the web, whatever. Yeah, it's a comedy, but he's super important to this. It's his character takes an interesting arc, but he has a lot of connections he has the biggest connections to a number of people in the MCU in ways we don't expect. In fact, he's referenced when you watch Ms. Marvel, when she mentions Kingo at that point, that's an Eternals reference. When you watch She-Hulk recently, there's a reference while she's scrolling on her computer to look for a job. You can see in the background, like, what's up with this, I won't say what it is, but there's a reference when she's looking at her computer in like the first or second episode. She's like, well, there's a reference to the Eternals in She-Hulk, which has been a thing that we've been wondering when somebody was going to make a reference to that, because it's kind of by the end of the film you kind of have to wonder how nobody notices this except for like a short little brief news thing at the end of the film. So yeah, it's got a big cameo at the end in the mid-credits sequence that I swear when I saw it the first time, I think it was the only reason certain people showed up for the film. They heard this actor was going to show up in the film, and they just squealed at the idea of seeing that actor show up. So yeah, it's to me, I realize this maybe not for everybody. It's not your standard superhero thing. There's a lot of complex emotions and complex decisions. It's not just we are good guys, these guys are bad guys, we're going to fight. In fact, the Deviants as a bad guy are literally just killing machines, and they don't make for interesting villains except to just punch and zap and things like that. That doesn't make for a great movie when it comes to conflict. And when you find that the Eternals themselves are a conflict with themselves, both externally and internally, and it makes for a much more dramatic and much more emotionally impactful film. It's true. It's just the way it is. And there's decisions you see in this that you don't necessarily agree with, And you kind of don't want these certain characters to do the things that you see them do or make the decisions they make. But that's kind of great. This is the first time we're seeing them, so there's no telling that where they're going to go next. I like it when I can't, even though I've read the comics, I like it when I don't know what's going to happen next, or that I have expectations and every one of them is fulfilled. Don't give me exactly what I expect ever. If you can give me something completely unexpected and probably in many cases even better than what I got, maybe not always, but it sometimes takes time to grow on you. But I think it's something that is just so much more interesting when you see a film like this. Don't give me what I expected going into it. Kick my butt and change my mind. And that's what a good film can do. And I think that's what they did. I think they did some really interesting things. And it does take, for me, it took a second watch to really fully appreciate it. And watching it here, where I could just pause it at certain points and go, that helped too. So do that if you feel like it, if you've already seen it. And I also had the subtitles on this time just to make sure I didn't miss anything. There was no subtitles in the theater, of course, so I kind of want to make sure I got all the dialogue clearly, because that does, many cases, really clarify things for you. I have some friends who have to watch with subtitles, and I've noticed when we watch things together, I learn a whole lot more than I expected. I was like, oh, I missed that line. I missed that reference. Subtitles can help if it's the kind of thing that it doesn't... if a film doesn't come easily to you or clearly to you and you don't know what they're talking about, sometimes the subtitles help. I think the only way this might have been improved, because there's so many characters and there's so much going on with this, is if they had made this a series, like a Disney Plus series. It may not have had the budget that would have been required for something like this. But I think if we had gotten to know them really well over like 10, 12 episodes, and then build to this there's at least 2 humongous fights in this. There's multiple, but there's one dead mid-film, and there's one at the very end where it's no holds barred kind of battle, and for the fate of the world, if not the universe. If we gotten to know these characters a little bit better, it's in some cases it seemed a little rushed. Like, oh, there's a romance here, oh, there's jealousy here, oh, there's, if they spent like an episode like getting to know Kingo or getting to know Cersei or whatever else and see how this all rolls out, it might have given us more emotional investment. I'm emotionally invested in the characters, but I think it would have been more so if they had chopped it up and made it into a series. You know what? If they have a lot of extra footage they didn't use, I say they repackage this again and make this into a 9-hour extravaganza on Disney Plus. Do it. I'll watch it all again, just with all extra scenes and really fleshing out the story for each one of them, and then just having the same conclusion, having the same big set piece battle that decides everything and tears so much apart. Yeah, I think it would still work, and maybe a little bit better. I don't know. It's so freaking hot. I'm trying to do this in the middle of the night, and it's still so freaking hot in here. I don't have air conditioning, so sorry. If it looks like I'm very, very wet, it's because I can't have a fan on me when I'm doing this, because it'll just make too much noise, I think, anyway. Let's pick tomorrow's episode.
382.
We're really just... Yeah, we're staying in that area. 382. Come on. 382. Okay. Is the documentary. I think it's going to be one episode. If it's multiple episodes, I'm going to be really surprised if they can dive that deep into this topic, but we'll see. Russia's wild tiger. Just one tiger. And it's wild, and it's in Russia. We'll see. Russia's Wild Tiger is what we're watching next on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that. Bye.